are live. So I want to say welcome to all of you who are here to meet Christina Torriente, to get to know her. And before I get into it too much, I want to stream her demo that she shares as an actress. So that's kind of fun. Okay, so here we go.
How much does he want?
200 million.
Say again?
$200 million. Make some more memories. Or we could make some right now. Holly oxen.
Movie's that one.
It's called The Orchard. It was actually a student film. This one's Ephraim's Rescue.
What do you think of that? Is that fun?
Whoa, Christina, I love that. So that's a little sample of Christina and the actress. She is also a film director and producer, and we can talk about some of those the details and some of the projects that she's done. And I would also love to talk about some things that you are wanting to do, just some dreams that you have that would be fun to talk about. She directed some Bible videos for the church.
Some of the Book of Mormon videos, yeah.
Oh, Book of Mormon. I was thinking
Just a few of them. There's lots of them, but I did a few episodes, yeah.
Okay, yes, because I saw you in some of those the behind the scenes. I was like, that's Christina. So that's why I was wondering if it was the Bible ones too, but it was Book of Mormon ones that I was watching. Okay, I wanted to welcome all of you guys. Thank you for being here and for giving Christina a chance to feel your support and know that people are listening. We're grateful that you're here to share this with us.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Something you said, just kind of about sharing stories and things that happen, just in our lives and happen to us. And I'm also a big believer that things just happen for us. And, regardless of what that looks like, sometimes it's super painful, sometimes it's joyous, and it's hard to see it in that way all the time. But I am learning little by little, every day that everything does kind of help us move forward in some way. And we have this theme in my house. It's kind of our family motto, which is fall forward. And so, just make mistakes. It's okay, but fall forward, at least learn from them, so if you fall backwards, then you're like a couple steps behind, but if you fall forward, at least you're like a little bit ahead than you were. I don't know. It's just one of the things that we like to say, but yeah, I think life is crazy. Life is hard. Life is beautiful. It's all those things. And yet, a lot of times it's the story we're telling ourselves too, right? And it's so easy to get caught up in the heartache. I'm very, very good at that, at oh, poor me. And this is so hard. But I really appreciated, especially the last few years, just the things that I'm learning about myself as I've been doing a lot of healing work. And I'm just grateful for professionals and people and support and just the ability to kind of learn and forgive myself, forgive others, and just keep going. So you
also mentioned before we got on the call, we both have in common just the understanding that the most difficult relationships are those that are the best teachers.
Yes.
I feel like that is the case.
Yes.
Anyway, that's something that we could talk about if you want. But there's I would love to start with first tell us, I don't know if I warned you about some of these questions. Tell us some fun facts about you. We've heard some fun facts already, but tell us more you want to share.
Thanks. Yeah, so I grew up in a family of 7. I grew up in Southern California. I'm kind of a beach girl, but then I fell in love with the mountains, and now I'm a wannabe farm girl. So, I just have learned all these new things about myself that I'm really enjoying. And I always wanted a little bit of property, or a little bit of just, so I have like this little mini wannabe hobby farm, and it's been really, really good for me. I have, let's see, 15 chickens, 2 ducks. I have a horse. She's a Mustang. So she was adopted from the wild about 4 years ago. And then I got her about a year ago, and I'm trying to work with her and train her. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm more green than she is, but I'm reading books, and I have friends that do that. And so I'm just trying to, it's one of the things that I felt I really needed to do in my life, which was just to kind of slow down and be more present with nature and animals. And it's been really good for me. And so I have 15 chickens, 2 ducks, a horse, 2 cats, and 2 dogs. So,
Wow.
and
That's not a
then,
wannabe farm. That's a true farm. You're a farm girl.
yeah. So just like just a few minutes ago, I was trying to figure out the pump to pump out the water from the trough, like a sump pump, I guess that's what it's called. I don't know. So I'm learning how to use that, and it like started splattering everywhere and got this dirty mud water all over me. But it's fun. I enjoy it, and I'm trying to figure it out. And the horse, we just kind of put a fence up, and she put her neck under and lifted it up. And even though there had been concreted in, so I got a call the other day. I was at a family reunion up at Bear Lake, and I had a call from my neighbor, your horse is running down the street. So had to like round up neighbors, help me.
In the city.
Yeah, so I'm totally like this. It's so fun and I love it, but I really, I don't know totally what I'm doing, but I'm trying new things, and that's been really good for me, things that I've always wanted to do.
That's
But
good. These are things that helps with recovery.
If it weren't for this prompting I had, or this download of like, you need to get a horse, and I'm like, what? I'm too busy. That is not possible. I love horses. I've always wanted one, but it's always this like, one day when I'm not so busy. And it was this, I had been praying a lot about like specific things, and it was get a horse. And I was like, I'm too busy. And what I felt was exactly like, you need to slow down. But then, when I get the phone call and I'm at this family reunion, I'm stressed out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope she's going to be okay. And I'm like, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no business owning a horse right now. But I am, you just have to trust, and you have to keep going. And I'm just trying to figure out a little more of who I am with whatever comes my way.
Well, I've heard, I know there's an actual term for it. It's some kind of horse therapy.
Equine therapy, yeah.
So it helps.
It's
I know.
yeah. It's
So
a thing. And I've loved learning just kind of that parallel of the horse, and how, when they're only worried about survival, their ways and safety, that's all they're worried about. And so through friends that train horses and Mustangs, it's been really neat to learn a little bit about myself, and how, we all do the same thing. I got to go and be there when they were adopting out, and you see these horses go through, they have to get their vaccine, and they go through these chutes, and every single one of them did one of the same things. They did fight. They started bucking and kicking all over, or they did the flight, which was just running as fast as they could, didn't know where they were going, and, freeze, fawn. And so it's just like fight, flight. Oh my gosh, I'm missing one. Anyways, you know what I mean.
Fight, freeze. I didn't know what fawn is. That's
Fawn is one. Fawn is kind of just like falling over, like, I don't even know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I'm not gonna make any decisions right now. Right. And I think that's what we do as humans, right? When we don't feel safe, and when we're struggling and we're trying to figure out where our safety is, we do any one of those things. And I do all of them. And so it's been interesting just learning about her and trying to figure out, how to get her halter on and helping her to feel safe. It's all about trust. It's all about us trusting each other, and then I don't give her enough attention for a while and we have to start all over again. And if she's really supposed to represent me a little bit, I learn a lot about how I take care of myself sometimes.
It's interesting. I that sounds more interesting than I had no idea. They also are they're sensitive to our emotions. I've heard that as well. They can feel, they can sense how we feel.
Yeah,
which
very
is
sensitive.
probably why they're so great therapists.
She seems pretty angry when I show up. I got to think about that, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, why are you angry? Oh, because I'm a little angry right now. And then it makes you think about it. So if you let it, I really believe in that. If you let it.
You kind of deflect your emotions. Is that what you mean? They kind of.
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting, or reflect. That's very cool. Okay, so describe a day or a week, if you want, in the life of Christina.
Oh man.
That's always a fun one because you've got the going and you got the producing going.
I would definitely, I definitely have the ADHD symptoms, which probably is why I thrive in this industry, because things do change. And so I do produce and I direct more than I act. Acting's kind of more fun and hobby, but yeah, like every day changes, which is kind of nice. And I'll have a project and then it ends, and then I'm trying to figure out what the next project's going to be. But I remember reading in this book called Delivered from Distraction for Adult ADHD. And it was like, what are, the three most, the best jobs for people with ADHD are a lawyer, a cop, and acting.
Oh, wow.
Industry. And I thought that was so interesting because I have a brother that's an attorney.
Wow.
My dad's a retired police officer, and then I was acting. So I just laughed out loud because I was like, well, that makes sense, So yeah, a week in the life for me is just, I've got kids and trying to keep up with their lives. I've got 2 adult kids and then 2 that are 12 and 14 now. And so it's really fun at these ages because now we can go do the fun things. I really love things like mountain biking and hiking. And, we floated down the river yesterday during the middle of a storm. So I'm either like out and about doing things, or I'm at work, or I'm at home trying to do some research for work. I've always got like 6 or 7 projects that I'm thinking about or trying to get going or talking to people about, as well as like the one that's paying the bills, right? And then I'm spending a lot of time on my little wannabe mini farm out there, cleaning up the chicken poop and putting it into the garden, and trying to get the halter on the horse and anything that I can. But I'm trying more and more to be more still. I do a lot of therapy. I do a lot of meditating and trying to so I'm either like busy, or then I'm like, okay, Christina, you have to sit still for a minute and just like soak it in and process. And so it's a lot trying to keep up with it all, but it's a lot of times my kids are like, okay, Mom, can we just like sit home and do nothing today? And I'm like, hey, but don't you want to do something fun? And they're like, we just want to sit here. I'm like, okay, that's probably a good idea. We'll do that.
I like that one. I like that too.
Yeah.
I understand.
But that comes with that flight, right? The flight are
True.
all the different trauma responses we tend to, that is one of my things, is like, stay busy, keep going. And my value is based on my accomplishments, which I know is not, right? But that's something that I've had to learn to kind of let go of defining myself by my accomplishments, which is hard to do because you also need to like pay your bills. So that's.
Well, I can see how that would be hard because it seems like all of us do aim for those accomplishments, and we feel like that is a place when we have reached those accomplishments, maybe we feel like our life is more value. Yeah. So I can see how that would be. It would be a challenge to not let it define you. And I guess in our opinion, and when we see you and doing all these things, sometimes society or your friends, they might make that define you to some degree. Oh yeah, she's that producer, she's the director, she's that adorable actress. I love. But that, I get it. That's
I'm also very messy.
like
I'm
that.
also, I have like piles of papers on my kitchen table. I'm, you know, I'm real. I'd like to think that, right? That I'm just pretty open.
Yeah.
But I'm messy, and I have my breakdowns, and I deal with anxiety and ADHD and depression at times. You know, I'm constantly, you know, trying to make sure that I'm trying to be as healthy as I can through all of that, navigate it. It's not easy. And we were talking about how I cuss like a sailor sometimes. And
The new skill.
it's a new skill. I've actually really enjoyed that. That and scream therapy in the car is really good for you. So get it out, guys. Get it out.
Therapy. Oh, that does sound good.
Yeah, just driving the car and just like scream. It's great.
Well, there's that energy that's inside of us from the anxiety or the fears or whatever, anger.
Yeah.
There's the energy with it, and it stays inside of us if we don't let it out. So I know I've never tried the scream therapy, but I know I do sing. That's one thing I do to release some of that energy is singing. There's other things though. Yeah, but just getting that energy out of you is helpful.
Yeah.
So I love hearing as much as you want to share of any details of your story, but I also know that it is in your heart to share some tips or some encouragement for us, because we all relate. We all have this one thing in common. This is something that I told Christina before we came on here on one of our prior conversations, is that one thing that all of us have in common is that to some degree we have experienced some kind of trauma or mental health struggles. And Christina understands these, and loss, we've all experienced loss in one way or another. There's the grieving stages, and there's overcoming and recovery, and we get in a place if we're in a place of, I will admit myself, when I was in my marriage, of blaming my spouse, and it was getting me nowhere but stuck, and having to be able to look at myself and heal. I had to recover as much as I was expecting him to recover, and get over whatever was ailing our marriage. But I did find it was in me, and I know that's in your heart as well. I know that is something, if you feel like you want to share, because I know that's where you feel like you connect with us. And you've told me a couple of things that you do. If you want to share that, you can, or whatever, however you want to take that.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I love how you said, you know, we all kind of have that in common, right? Because I think a lot of times we all go through really hard things, and we need to validate that, right? And we need to, I want to talk about that in a second, but it's never to say like, oh, I've been through more, or they've been through less, or more than me. Like I think we just are a society of comparing, and we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, and including our hardships. And the reality is, like, we're all going through this human experience, and we're all experiencing grief in one way or another. And one of the things that so, you know, just surface level, I've been married and divorced twice. I've been through my own mental health struggles. I've lost a child so dear to me that I got to help raise for 13 years, who passed away. I've been through, you know, just a lot of going back into my past, and I have an amazing family, amazing life. But, you know, we all have things, just even from our childhood, just things that we've taught ourselves or believed about ourselves based on just random events that happen. And so, but one thing that I've learned in all of that, at least for me, is that I love, there's this meme that I saw, and I don't know who wrote it, but it just rang so true to me, which is grief is love that has nowhere to go. And I just feel that for really anything, right? Grief, whether it's a loss of a loved one, or whether it's divorce, like, you have this expectation, you have this love that you have to give, and then all of a sudden you don't know what to do with it. And it could even be a job, like you love this job, or you thought it was going to work out better than you expect, you know, better than it did. And then all of a sudden you have this like energy, you don't know where to put it. And I think that's, you know, just so common for all of us. It's like we have this love, we don't know where
I like
to
that.
put. And I think, you know, in the singles community, or especially with a traditional base of, you know, this huge desire to be married and have that happily ever after Cinderella story, like it almost is like I imagine it's a grief every day, right? That sometimes we don't validate, and I'm really lucky to have people in my life and support, and I have an amazing I'm not married, but I have a best friend we're kind of in partnership right now, and he's just been incredible and in helping be a safe space for me as I'm figuring out all of my healing, and I've kind of done the same for him. And you know, right now it's without the pressure of like, let's be each other's support right now as we're working through these things, and then we'll see where it goes. But as you're working through your own healing, like I go through these times, I was like, I have no business being in a relationship right now. Like I shouldn't, because I'm just trying to figure out where to put all this energy and this love and these hurts that I've been through. And so, but I'm working through that, and I'm learning to trust myself again, learning to trust my judgment, learning to recognize what my triggers are. And I think you have to be in friendships or relationships to also know what all those triggers are. And so a lot of times we want to like, I don't want to love because that just causes hurt. But then you also have to like be open to it so that you can understand the things that are still deep inside that you need to work on. And that's not fun either. I don't want you to be my mirror right now. I think, but that is very common, right? When things haven't gone in the way that you've hoped or expected, that is a grief, that is a loss. And I think it's important to recognize that grief process in whatever it is that we had an expectation of that didn't work out. And so that's one of my big things that I've learned, and I'll shout from the rooftops if I were to write a book, this is what it would be. But it's like, it would be starting off with validating your pain. And I think we don't do that very often. We might do it, you go to the hospital, and I remember somebody told me this analogy, and it's never left me. But if I were to go to the hospital right now and my arm was chopped off, right, and I'm just like bleeding to death, I wouldn't go to the hospital and tell the doctor like, hey, I'm at like a pain level 2. I have a lot of faith right now, but could you just give me a Band-Aid? I'd really appreciate that. Like, you wouldn't say that. But when it comes to our emotions and it comes to our heartaches and our sorrows, like we're all wearing these masks, and we're all kind of putting on that smile, like, how are you doing? I'm great, doing so well. And I think we even do that to our Creator, to God. We're looking at Him and we're just like, hey, so if you could help me out here, I'm kind of hurting right now, but I have faith. Like, something hit me when that person explained that to me. All of a sudden my prayers changed, because I'm like, oh no, like, and so now I'll describe my pain and I'll be like, okay, God, I feel like I got ran over by a tractor today. I feel like I've been like stabbed with 1,000 poisonous darts. Like, I will describe it in the most creative way I can. And then I'll be like, now I need you to take it. Because I think, just like an ER doctor, if you don't tell him what your pain level is, he can't really help you. And I think that's really important with our, the healer, is to tell him, this is how much I'm hurting. And I think I would love it if our faith communities were really safe places for everyone that we could all go do that. And you don't want to like bear all your, throw all your underwear out there, but you also want to be like, hey, I am hurting right now. What have you done? What has helped you? What actual applications have you put into your lives that will help me work through this? So that's just one thing I think. Hi, Vicki. I relate to what you're saying. Yeah, I just thank you. I think it's true. Like, we minimize our pain. We don't say it out loud. It's taboo. And then I believe we don't truly heal it. So for me, it's been things that really, so then another phrase that we have in my family with my kids is like, you got to feel it to heal it. You got to feel it and let it out. And sometimes you have to sit in it. Sometimes you just have to sit there and let yourself be sad, because that's also a part of this beautiful journey of life, right? The joy, the happiness, and also just this heart-wrenching sadness. And I remember, I'll share this real quick. I have a dear friend of mine. He's very gifted, and he does like massage energy work. Love it. It's so great. But I remember talking to him one time, and I just called him, and I was just not in a good space. I was really heartbroken over some heartaches. And he said, "Do you want the pain to go away?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you?" I'm like, "I think so." And he's like, "I think in this, I mean, we always do, right? We don't want to have to feel the pain." But he said, that pain is related to love. I know you have love that's associated with that pain. And that pain represents the love that you have for the people involved and that situation. And so I hope you never let go of that pain 100%. I hope you like allow yourself to continue to feel the love and the pain that comes with that situation. And I was like, okay, you're right. But I think, it's allowing ourselves to validate our own pain and then feeling it. And Jesus wept, right? He did. He went and took the time after his cousin passed away. He wanted to go be alone. And then he got followed by these group of people. And then he performed a miracle. And then he's like, okay, now I'm going to be alone. And then he came back and walked on water and performed miracles. But I just think it's just so important to let ourselves weep and let God weep with us. I have felt him weep with me. And I think that's the most beautiful experience we can have, is that empathy with others, because we know what it feels like.
Yes.
That's most, I don't know. It's just like, because the Savior was able to do everything on our behalf, he could feel that. And now we can feel that for others too. And I don't sorry, I'll just keep going on, and I'll just shut up for a sec. But
I was just loving what you're saying.
Yeah, but that's been, validate your pain and feel it to heal it, and finding ways, like actual applications of how can I, you don't want to sit and grovel in it. That's not right either. But you do need to face it. You can't run from it. You can't. The only way through is through. And so you just got to figure out, okay, where is this coming from? Where is the root of this pain? Is it from yesterday? Or wait a second, actually probably started when I was, who knows how old, because some kid said something mean to me, and all of a sudden I believe it. And now I've continued that belief the rest of my life, right? So it's been, I think, finding those things. Have you done, I don't know, Sheri, if you've done like EMDR or A.R.T?
I haven't done A.R.T. I would love for you to tell us about that, but I have done EMDR, and that was really healing for me. That was something that, because there are these experiences, I'm sure most people know about this, but those who don't, it's just going back into your memory of experiences where we held on to that grief or that pain. For me, growing up in a home where I was not allowed to feel anything negative. And to this day, I noticed myself smiling in the middle of something that's really sad for me. It's my natural go-to, but not being able to, I guess, nurture or validate that child, that was those moments when I was really sad and I really needed to be validated, like you're saying. And EMDR did that, but I don't know about A.R.T. I've heard of it. Tell me if you know about it.
Yeah, it's similar. There's a few different, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I've just been to lots of therapy.
Yeah.
But there's so EMDR does that, and then A.R.T is very similar, but it's kind of an extension that supposed to go a little faster. But it's kind of, you paint a picture in your mind of a scenario that either you have anxiety over upcoming, or it could be something from the past, and then you go and you validate the pain, you figure out where that stems from, and then you like have buzzers in your hand, or there's like the rapid eye movement, you're following the therapist's fingers, but it just gets your brain activated so that you can kind of tap into your memories a little bit more. But EMDR or A.R.T, hypnotherapy, there's a lot of that just kind of helps you go back and feel and reprocess. And then you go through that and you kind of see the whole scenario from another angle. And you're like, okay, so I've been thinking about it in this way. This is the story I've been telling myself all these years. But really, it really is that this person or this situation, they were just doing the best they knew how. And they didn't really understand either. They were dealing with their own stuff. And so it wasn't personal, right? But it is what it's what we need to go back to that so we can face it and realize, okay, this is a new way to see it. And now it can become a new story of like, oh, that actually helped me. I'm glad I had to go through that so that I can now understand a little bit more about myself. But yeah, it's been, so that's been really good. Other applications of ways I've been able to do that. A lot of meditating. I've loved that. And a lot of it's about intention. Some people have this like, oh, meditation sounds kind of, I don't know, hippie, but I love it. I love lighting a candle or lighting incense and just taking deep breaths and just watching the smoke for a while and just being present. It's all about just being connected to yourself and to your senses. For me, whatever that looks like, it can be washing dishes, but it's just like, how can I be a little more present and in the moment and recognize what's going on in my body and why am I feeling like that? I mean, so, people are doing the ice plunges. I'll do that sometimes if I feel like my body needs a reset. Like, I'm just going to go in a really cold bath right now. I'm trying to think. Oh, acupuncture has been amazing for me. I have a buddy that does that, and he kind of walks you through meditations at the same time. Lots of cool things that are out there. You just have to be willing to try it and connect it to, like, don't be scared of it, because for me, those are ways that I have connected to my creator that much closer. It's been a way for me to feel that even deeper. So that's how I feel. There's
different ways,
there's different ways, and some people can go a little out there, but you just have to trust yourself and try to just be more present. And
everyone is so different. Their personality, their even our spirituality, I think, is different. It's and it is. I think of it all as some level of spirituality, in a sense. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So Juanita had a thought to share that I want to share with you. She said, "Great thoughts and ideas. Thank you. I think of the singles, no children, pain as a double grief, just different than other types of grief people have. I recently read something that called it an ambiguous, disenfranchised grief." Sorry, it's tiny and my eyesight's failing. I think in the singles community, sometimes people feel they have to show that they are happy, positive, and don't mind being single. For example, in how they present in public. But some do seem to be more open now in being more open about the hurt and the pain and like in your message. I love that. And Juanita, I totally agree. And I've done both. I have said, I'm happy being single. I can be single for the rest of my life. And then other times I'm like, yeah, I would love to have that connection. But I don't have a lot of hope. And so then I go to I don't really want it anyway. So it's not always healthy, but that's why we're doing the intentional courtship, right? We're going to work through all those things. But thank you, Juanita. I think you're right that we're not always honest with ourselves, and sitting with it, like you're saying, is so important. I also love what you said about, I wish we had church communities, and some people do. Some people are lucky to have church community where people validate and they listen and they care and they love and they support. I have that in my ward. I have that here. However, I think more people are uncomfortable with someone sharing their grieving pain, and maybe for the fear of keeping them victimized, or they're not going to be able to heal if they don't get over their complaining, and there's a lot of that. But I think it is important, and I've actually gone back to that, where I have I've needed to express more validation for people than saying, I do say, okay, now what are you going to do with this? But I need to be more empathetic, like you're saying. So anyways, there's just a lot of thoughts in my head going on.
I have a lot too. And I'm like, oh, what do I add? Because I think, first of all, we need to like, thank you for bringing that up, because that, I can't even imagine. I did get married really young, and I had children really young. And so my whole adult life, I have had children. So I honestly don't know that pain of, and so I appreciate you bringing that up, because I don't know what that's like, right? Even without, I know what it's like to go to church by myself, or to not go at all for a while because or to not feel like I fit. I definitely feel that, it's hard to know where you fit. I do have an amazing community as well. It's and great friends and people that are there. But I think regardless, whenever you're not in that picture perfect mold, or even for me, I live it the best that I can in my life. And I do love the foundation I was raised in, and I'm super grateful for it, and I still honor it and love it. But when you're not necessarily like living up to all of it, or you're not that picture perfect person checking off all of the boxes, it's really easy to feel like you just don't fit, or you see it from a different perspective. But where do I express that, right? How can I express that safely? And so I think, again, I don't know what that's like to be. So thank you for bringing that up. And I honor that. Like that must be really hard and painful to go to church every Sunday, or to be in a community where it's so much about forever and ever, right? And then you're like, well, what about me? And so, so thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important. And I think it kind of leads me to this other thought of, because I always want to be really careful not to present myself as something I'm not, right? Like especially in this world, we put those masks on, and then we look at each other and we're like, oh, I want to be like that person. I don't know how she's doing it, or I don't know how he's able to do all those things so perfectly. And I just don't ever want people to look at me and be like, oh, I want to be able to do like her, when I am a mess, you guys. I am a mess, and that's okay. And I think that there's a thing called the middle war. This is my thing. I don't know if anyone else has ever coined it and I stole it from them, I'm sorry. But I do think there's a middle war and most of it's inside of ourselves, where if we don't feel like we fit in this box, especially in such a culture that's very black and white, right? Very forever and ever, or never at all is what it feels like. And when we don't feel like we fit, there's a war inside of ourselves, right? And we have voices on two, I have very good friends who are over here like, how could you still like believe in these certain things? And then over here, I have people that are like, how can you not live up to all of these things? And I'm just like, I'm just doing the best I know how right now, and I think, but it causes this war of shame and guilt, and we're just, we're just all good people trying to figure it out, is what I believe. And so, following what's best for you, following the Spirit in your lives, and trusting that is what I would say. But it's a hard place to be in the middle. And I go back to, I was at this artist retreat. It's for like filmmakers and storytellers and artists in the LDS community. And it was Patrick Mason. He's a scholar. He's been on the show Come Follow Up many times. And he was giving this speech that was just incredible. And he talked about being the extremities, I think is how he said it. And a lot of times, like as filmmakers, we're kind of in a different space. We see things maybe a little bit differently. I feel like a lot of times the experiences that I've had in my life kind of lead me to understand audience a little bit more. So then I'm like, oh, well, actually, I think we need to try this a different way, because that's not going to help me. Let's see what could actually help people. But sometimes when you don't feel like you fit, you're on the extremities, you're like the fingers, right? Or the toes of the body of Christ. And we have the center, but sometimes we need to remember that these extremities, because we may not have the same exact picture perfect experience, we, as the extremities, like, we're able to reach out. We're able to reach out and touch those, to touch lives and help other people who are also hurting. And I don't know, I just really love the way Patrick explained that as if you feel like you don't fit, that's okay. That means that you're just one of those that is reaching out to those who maybe aren't even there at all, or feel like they don't even belong at the table at all, which is not true.
I agree with that too. In fact, there's someone that I admire. Have you heard of Joel Osteen? Do you know who he is?
Mm-hmm.
He has such a huge impact in the world, and he teaches Christ's gospel. He teaches not the fullness of the gospel as I understand it and believe it, but he has impacted me with his preachings and his testimonies and his books and stories. So that's how and that's just an example. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but what I'm saying is he is making this difference in his world, in his way, and he is bringing people to Christ in his corner.
I just think there's so much good everywhere. There's so much good and truth and love to be shared in all communities. And it's just, how can we build bridges a little bit more and realize we're all in this together, is how I see it.
So if you wrote a book, you mentioned that earlier, if you wrote a book, what would you call it?
Okay, so I guess I'm looking at my little notes that I didn't want to forget a couple things. Okay, so it kind of, I don't know what I would call it necessarily, but the things that I thought about, like the key in dealing with heartache, right? And as we're thinking about our story and sharing our story, right? It's validating your pain levels, feel it to heal it. And then one of the things that I've thought about a lot is, and somebody had told me once, you learn about the adversary, you learn about opposition, right? There's opposition in all things. And I actually got to direct that episode of the Book of Mormon videos when Lehi is telling he's telling Jacob, actually, which was so interesting because Jacob was like the perfect child and had never even been in Jerusalem. He was just born in the wilderness. And it's like, Lehi's telling him all about the atonement of Jesus Christ, and he's telling him about opposition and all things. And I thought about that a lot and why he's talking to Jacob. And what I felt was, Jacob may not have been the sinner like his older brothers, but he had trauma. He had heartache. He saw his older brothers fighting, to the point where they're trying to kill each other, right? And so I think he needed the atonement just as much. And I thought that was a really cool lesson for us. And then I also thought about, so there's this key moment where I was talking to the guy who played Lehi, and we were trying to figure out the why was Lehi telling this to Jacob? And then why now? Why at this time in his life? And so I remember as I was trying to think of the idea for the scene and how I wanted to portray it, we have kind of the followers, Nephi and his family and the good ones, close to Lehi, and Jacob, of course, is closest at the time. And then kind of in the back row is Laman and Lemuel and their kids. And I wondered why was Lehi having to say this to Jacob now? And I wanted to add one line, which was really hard to do because they didn't want to do anything that wasn't scripture, unless we absolutely had to. But I wanted Jacob to say, "But Father, why?" Mm-hmm. So he said, there needs to be an opposition in all things. And so we have Jacob then say, "But Father, why?" And then we see Lehi kind of look around, like he says, "Well, if it were not so," and then he stops. And then he looks over at Laman and Lemuel. If it were not so, righteousness could not have been brought to pass, right? And so it's almost like this moment, at least this is what I felt, was Lehi got this beautiful little tender mercy at the end of his life. Like all his life, he's like begging his children, pleading with the tender pleadings of a parent, right? Rebuking them, calling them to repentance. And at the end of his days, he gets this little tender mercy of, oh, if it hadn't been for the opposition, then righteousness couldn't have been brought to pass. Nephi wouldn't have been who he was. They wouldn't have had this whole experience. I don't think Lehi would even have prayed to leave Jerusalem if it hadn't been for his fear and worry over his sons. And so I think that opposition is required and needed, but there's a catch to that, which is we always think of opposition in the negative. We think of it as the devil and the adversary or the darkness. And yet, if opposition is needed in all things, it's not black and gray. It's not darkness and like midlight. It's darkness and it is the brightest of light. And we can expect that, and we can look for that, and we can call upon that, just like we might call upon or cast out something negative. We can call upon angels and light and bring that into our lives. I really believe that. I've been able, so someone told me that don't forget, you can call on the light too. You don't have to just think of opposition as the darkness. And I was like, okay, that is amazing. And so the opposition to the opposition would be the name of my book. But
very good. So we also talked about this. I don't know if you're ready to talk about this. We can back up if you had more to talk about, but just for the fun of it, I told her an idea that I have for a movie I think that we should write together.
Yeah.
we could have brainstorming, and she came up with some fun ideas too. So what I'm going to do is turn off the streaming for the Facebook group, and then each of you who are on the call to open up your cameras. Are you ready for that, Christina, or did you have more that you want to share still?
Story. I think, let me.
There was the
last little step in all of that, I will just say this is, and it has to do with like that opposition to the opposition, which is like grieve with praise. And so it was actually a Pentecostal woman who, a leader of her group, that I happened to have an encounter with this non-denominational music group. And she came up to me. She was just like blessing people and loving people and just sharing her heart with them. And she said, would it be okay if I bless you? I'm like, okay. and she just prayed for me. And she looked at me and she said, you're hurting. And I said, I know I am. And I shared some things. And she said, grieve with praise. Grieve and let yourself feel it, but praise at the same time. Praise our Savior. Praise the Lord that he overcame all things. And so anyways, I want to make sure we spun to that positive on that too. But
I do want to talk more about that, because when we feel that grief and that pain, we want it to go away. We don't want to feel it. And you've said so many beautiful things about just sit with it and just let it exist in the middle of the gratitude and the praise, and then also find out where it comes from, because if it's attached to loving someone or this love that you have in your heart, there's always going to be the opposition to that love too. I mean, we all know, having been in love in our marriages and then having it be ripped from us, there's the opposition, and there's that grief and that pain. So anyway, that's amazing. So you guys, we don't have to chase away the grief. We don't have to chase away the pain. We just have to sit with it and do
it's so hard.
Yes.
It's hard work, you guys. And it's like an onion. It's like you peel off one layer. And I know a lot of you have probably all done this too. So I'm sure there's so much I could learn from each of you, but it's like you peel off a layer and you're like, oh, I healed that wound. And then it's like, bam, here's another trigger. And you're like, oh, what is this from? Right. And then I feel like, you're getting closer to the core of the onion. Don't stop. It is painful and it's hard, but it's worth it. And that's
And
So-
letting the layers heal, right? I mean, there was a time at the end of my marriage when I was likening it to a huge, gaping, cancerous wound. And at the time, I was just trying to put band-aids on it. Like you had mentioned, that going to the ER, you
Little
don't
flesh wound.
you don't just say I have a little flesh wound, I'm good.
Yeah.
But you heal it one layer at a time, and but sometimes you have to sit with the pain. You have to maybe scrape out some of the scarring so that layer can heal. And
It's got to move through you, and that's a hard thing to like understand. But even I did A.R.T today, and it was amazing, and I was able to kind of work through a scenario in my life, and it was great. And then I was able to but I could feel a little bit of tension and I just so happened to I was lucky enough that I have like a gift card to a massage place. But I could feel like I had worked through some stuff, but my head was kind of hurting and my shoulders were kind of hurting. And so I'm driving home and I'm like, I feel like I kind of need to move it even more. And so I called the massage place. I'm like, hey, do you happen to have any like cancellations? So like, we did just have one, come right now. And I'm like, okay. So I got a massage. And so I do believe you got to move it and feel it and then move it through you. Don't let it stay inside you. But
that's cool that you can feel it though. You recognize that
start to.
where it is. And that's the part of the mindfulness, is being aware of what it is that that pain, where's that pain? And
Yeah, because describing it, it might be a pressure in your head, or it might be like a pain on your shoulders. And I felt that a lot when I was like feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders all the time. And then it was like, okay, you can let go of that. Like, I mean, I still do it every day, but it's like, when I'm mindful, I'm like, okay, my shoulders hurt. Nope, I don't have to carry all that. It's time to let it go. Or sometimes it's here, like in your throat. And it's like, okay, what am I not saying? What if I, is there somebody I need to say something to, or like, do I need to work through something with somebody and speak the words that need to come out of my mouth? I don't know, but I do believe in that movement. I'm still like so amateur at it, I feel, and I'm still learning, but hopefully it's helpful because right now.
Very helpful. No, it's awesome. In fact, I'm listening to at the same time that I'm pulling up the stream.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if we should have, anyway, I'm just going to close it off so that the people that are in here it can be more private, more personal.
Yeah.
So stop the streaming. Thanks for listening, guys. What brought you to doing what you're doing is what I'm curious about. I didn't even ask that.
Oh yeah, that's right. We didn't talk about that. So crazy. So I studied pre-med in college for 2 years and then realized how much chemistry I'd have to take. And I thought, never mind, I don't want to do that. I ended up getting married really young, had 2 children pretty young, and I just kind of put my first husband through school, and then we got divorced shortly after that. He and I are great friends, and we had such a fun chat the other day talking about some of this past, so it just brought back that memory. But he so when we got divorced, I was trying to figure out, we'd separated, we're trying to figure out how to survive. And I remember like praying about a lot of things, and it was and I had tried substitute teaching for a minute, because I was like, well, maybe that's what I should do. And that I realized then I'd have to have the same students the whole year. And I'm like, no, I kudos to teachers. Oh my gosh, thank you for what you do for my children. But it was not my path. I tried nursing, didn't feel like that was for me either. And so it was very interesting. I got a blessing, and it told me to work on my talents. And I didn't really know what that meant. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I used to play piano and flute and sing, and I like photography. So I kind of just like focused on those things for a little bit. And then I saw an ad in a paper that said, be an extra in movies. And I had done a little bit of acting when I was a kid, like around 7 years old. My mom used to put my hair in curlers, and I hated it. And I begged her, please don't make me. I was in California, so I'd have to wait in line in LA forever. And then I'd go like audition and like cry to these, casting directors, because I didn't want to be there. So it was really funny when I saw this and this ad in the paper, and I was like, well, I can be an extra in movies until I figure out what I want to do. And so I went and met with this agency, and I was like, but the whole way I'm praying, I'm like, okay, I don't want to get stuck into some like industry I don't feel good about. I know what this world is like, and it wasn't what I really had dreamed or wanted, which is so interesting. But I got up to the front door and it said talent agency. And as soon as I saw the word talent, it was like, that's why you've been working on your talents. I'm like, what?
Wow.
That's what you want me to do? And the first thing they asked was, well, what are your talents? So I'm like, well, let me tell you, because I've been working on my, so I listed things that I'd been working on, and they're like, well, do you want to act as well? You could do that and be an extra. And I was like, okay. So I immediately just started auditioning and got some roles. I did do some extra background work. And then, but shortly after that, so I was doing some auditions, a little bit of jobs, but I also needed something kind of steady. And it's Utah, so it's not easy to make a steady income as an actress unless you like really put a lot of work and energy into it. And so I had gone and prayed about, I was actually at the temple at the time, and just prayed like, what am I supposed to do? And just had this feeling like, don't worry, something's going to happen. So I had taken this class, an acting class, from someone who is now a dear friend, but and he does local casting here in Utah. And he called and he said, hey, Christina, do you need a job? And I was like, yes, I do. And he's like, this is so weird, but I know you have a family. He had no idea my situation, that I was going through a divorce. He's like, I'd hate to ask this of you because I know you have kids, but I need a photo double for a Disney film. So there's this Disney film coming into town, and you look just like this 13-year-old actress. And I was 25 at the time. And so we would cut your hair and put you in her wardrobe. You're the same size as her, because they can only work like they're 12 to 13 hour days, but depending on the age of a kid under 18, they can only work so many hours, right? And so they would film her face and then film me from behind. And so that started, I did that for the first film, and then I did like 5 other films like that, including High School Musical and several others, where I was a photo double and a stand-in. But that was the best education I could get of like how the whole set worked. And so then, fast forward a few years later, and it was, you're going to work for the church. And I'm like, wait, what? And applied and didn't get the job. So I went back to Temple and it's like, you're going to work for the church. And I was like, I already applied. I didn't get it. And then they called me like 6 months later. Hey, we remember you and we'd like you to come help us here. And so it was a very interesting, different path than planned. But 18 years later of being in the industry, and I've been able to do some really fun things.
Well,
So
definitely divinely led.
thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you, Christina, for taking the time to share with us your story, your
Thanks for having me.
encouragement. Yes, thank you so much. And all of you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for letting me share. It's good for me and makes me really think about how, we all need each other. We all need.
For sure.
We're all in it together.
That's right. Thanks for sticking around, everyone, and hanging out with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great night. Thank you.
You just gotta let that old story go. You just gotta let that good river flow into your heart. It's a start.